If you've ever looked closely at a slice of bread, you've probably noticed the small holes scattered throughout it. They aren't defects, and they aren't added on purpose for appearance. Those holes are actually a record of what happened while the bread was being made. From the moment flour meets water, bread begins a slow transformation shaped by chemistry, biology, and time. The holes inside bread tell a story about fermentation, trapped gas, and structure forming under heat. While different breads have different hole patterns, the reason they exist at all is surprisingly consistent across most types. So, why do bread slices have holes? Understanding it means understanding how dough becomes something light, soft, and edible instead of dense and flat. Once you know what causes them, it becomes clear that holes aren't just normal. They're essential to what bread is. Let's dive in, right here on History of Simple Things. The main reason bread has holes is fermentation, a process driven by yeast. Yeast is a living microorganism that feeds on the natural sugars found in flour. As it consumes those sugars, it produces carbon dioxide gas and small amounts of alcohol as byproducts. This process happens slowly while the dough rests, often during what bakers call the proofing stage. The carbon dioxide has nowhere to escape, so it forms bubbles inside the dough. Over time, these bubbles grow and multiply, creating pockets of gas throughout the mixture. These gas pockets are the earliest versions of the holes you eventually see in baked bread. Without fermentation, dough would remain heavy and compact, producing bread that is flat, hard, and dense rather than light and airy. Fermentation alone doesn't explain why the holes stay in place. That job belongs to gluten, a network of proteins formed when wheat flour is mixed with water and kneaded. As dough is worked, gluten strands stretch and link together, creating a flexible, elastic structure. This structure acts like a net, trapping the carbon dioxide gas released by yeast. Instead of escaping, the gas pushes against the gluten, expanding the dough from the inside. If gluten is well developed, it can stretch without tearing, allowing the gas bubbles to grow larger. If gluten is weak or underdeveloped, gas escapes too easily and fewer holes form. The balance between gas production and gluten strength determines how airy or dense the final bread will be. How dough is handled plays a major role in the size and distribution of holes. Kneading strengthens gluten and redistributes gas bubbles throughout the dough. Proper kneading creates many small, evenly spaced bubbles, which result in soft sandwich bread with uniform holes. On the other hand, minimal kneading allows larger bubbles to remain intact, leading to breads with bigger, more irregular holes. Shaping also matters. When dough is pressed, folded, or rolled, some gas pockets are intentionally pushed out while others remain. Bakers control this step depending on the style of bread they want. A tightly shaped loaf produces smaller holes, while gently handled dough preserves larger air pockets, which is why some breads look dramatically open inside. The moment dough enters the oven, everything speeds up. Heat causes yeast to become more active for a short time, producing a final burst of gas known as oven spring. At the same time, the gas already inside the dough expands rapidly. As temperatures rise, yeast eventually dies, but by then the structure of the bread has already begun to set. Proteins coagulate, starches gelatinize, and moisture turns to steam. This combination hardens the gluten network, locking the gas bubbles into place. What were once soft pockets of carbon dioxide become the holes you see when the bread cools. Baking doesn't create the holes. It preserves the ones formed during fermentation. Not all bread has the same hole pattern, and that's intentional. Soft sandwich bread is designed to have small, even holes so it can hold spreads without falling apart. Artisanal breads like sourdough often have large, irregular holes because they use longer fermentation times and gentler handling. Flatbreads have very few holes because they contain little yeast or are baked before fermentation can fully develop. Ingredients also play a role. Whole grain flours disrupt gluten networks, leading to smaller or fewer holes. Higher hydration doughs allow gas bubbles to expand more easily, creating larger holes. Each bread style balances fermentation, gluten development, and shaping differently, resulting in distinct textures and appearances. The scientific understanding of fermentation and microorganisms began to take shape in the 19th century through the work of Louis Pasteur, who proved that fermentation was driven by living organisms rather than spontaneous chemical reactions. His research helped explain why yeast behaves the way it does in bread dough and why controlled fermentation matters. Modern food science shows that bread holes form when carbon dioxide gas is trapped inside a developing protein-starch network created by gluten and hydrated flour. As baking begins, the gas expands, gluten stretches, starch is set, and moisture turns into steam, fixing those pockets in place. Each hole reflects a precise balance between biological activity and physical structure. Even small changes in hydration, fermentation time, or oven temperature can noticeably alter the crumb, which is why consistent bread baking requires both scientific understanding and careful technique. Bread slices have holes because yeast creates gas, gluten traps it, and heat sets the structure during baking. These holes are signs of fermentation and careful handling, not flaws. Their size and pattern shape the bread's texture, softness, and how it holds toppings. Once you understand how they form, it becomes clear that holes aren't accidental. They're essential to what makes bread bread. Thank you for watching. If you have suggestions for our next video, feel free to share them in the comments below. We'll be sure to give you an acknowledgement for your contribution. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the history of simple things. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more stories woven through the smallest details.